Well, good afternoon. Thank you for coming to this particular presentation, Developer Tips and Tricks. Can I just have a quick show of hands, first of all? How many of you have been to one of my previous tips and tricks presentations? Oh dear. And you came back? I mean, okay. Well, some of the jokes are the same. I apologize. So we'll start off with the standard tip 0. Programmers always start at 0. Tip 0 is there are 2 other presentations happening at exactly this time. You should probably choose one of those. I won't be offended if you stand up and leave now. So let me give you a little bit of background about who I am, first of all, by way of introduction. As Dave said, my name's Keith Donaldson. I'm the Director of Business Development in Trihedral UK. What does that mean? Well, I sweep the floor and I make the coffee in the Aberdeen office. But I also look after our European customers across EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And most recently, I've been helping support the Delta sales team within Europe to grow our business over there. I've been with the company for 25 years. I've been a user of the company's software for 29 years. I was actually a customer before I joined Trihedral UK. My background, I did a degree in computer science at the Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen. So I'm a programmer at heart. I really love software engineering, and I really love the product. So hopefully that comes across in here. So what I have for you today are 20 tips and tricks. Now this is a really difficult and tricky presentation to put together because I never know the range of people. So presumably we have operators, we have developers, we have end users, all grouped together here. And what I do is I go onto our internal Teams chat and ask for different tips and tricks. And the same ones keep coming up again, but I like to also get new things in there. So we've got a mixture of things here. I have repeated 1 or 2. I've tried to keep it very little, but it's the 1 or 2 that people keep mentioning. So it's maybe something that you guys will get good benefit from. And there's also some overlap. If some of you have been to Chris Little's new things, again, I'll maybe mention 1 or 2 of the new things that are coming because they really are, to highlight them so that when they get released, you should take a look at them because they're really good. So hopefully this will be interesting. If you have any questions, very happy to answer all the questions. We'll take the questions at the end if that's okay. We'll wake you all up and then Dave will come round and we'll get that just so that we've got a record of the questions being asked and happy to answer any questions. So without further ado, let us begin with tip number 1. So the services page. This actually was a tip that I've mentioned before, but I think it's worth looking at again. The services page shows you the service architecture of your application. Okay, so this is typically when you have more than one VT-SCADA computer running. This will show you the status of the machines. And we can take a look at that. I should say, the setup that I have running on my laptop, so I'm going to be switching about a little bit. I have VT-SCADA running on my laptop. My laptop is called Keith Laptop. I was up all night thinking of that name. And then I created a virtual machine on Keith's laptop, and I called that Keith's Laptop VM. It is also running VT-SCADA. So I've got a dual machine architecture here just to try and set up. So if I Alt-Tab through to my application, this is actually the virtual machine application. So this is going to get all very complicated, but let me try and get to my developers tips and tricks application here. And I'm going to sign in with I was told by Alan Hudson that the most powerful username and password combination is Allen, but I would have to disagree with him. There we go. And if you go down to the little hamburger menu, I seem to have, it's back. Into the, I seem to be losing my video connect. Happened earlier too. Okay. If I go into my diagnostics, you can see that the services page is actually listed in there. And here you can see a list of all the VT-SCADA services. Now, VT-SCADA is split into lots of different services. So every driver instance is a service. We've got things like the system historian, the system alarm historian. These are all services that can be run on one computer or another computer. And I can see at the moment that there are 3 services running on Keith Laptop VM. There's the sibling tag Modbus comms driver. There is, I don't know whether I'm just touching it wrong. There's a workstation driver and a value synchronization service, whatever that is. It's for synchronizing values. That's really good. And there is a service architecture tab, which will show you a list of all the machines that are participating in this application. So I have the primary server, which is Keith Laptop. I have the backup server, which is Keith Laptop VM. And then I have another server called another server, but it hasn't actually participated in this network. So that's all I'm really going to say on this page, with one exception, that there is a very handy set of icons in the top here. The first one is called Switch All Away. It really is. And what this does is it will switch all of the services away from this computer and onto the backup server or another server. So strictly speaking, what it's saying is it's removing itself from the list of servers and letting VT-SCADA decide which is the next best server for all the different services. Why is this useful? Well, it's a really good idea. If you have a dual machine and you need to do an operating system upgrade, for example, you want to shut down your VT-SCADA server. But you want to make sure that the backup has taken over control and is correctly communicating with your I/O before you shut down the primary. So if you switch all of those away, you can then check, make sure everything's good, make sure everything continues on. Then you can shut down the primary, do your installation, bring it back up. The services will all jump back by default to the primary server, and you can continue on. There is another option, which is switch all to the next server, so that it just bumps everything down to the next server. And there is another one to switch everything back to the primary server. Right. Tip number 1, done. Tip number 2, I couldn't not put this one in. The widget search. So I've had this tip in variously over the last 4 years that I've done this. And previously, you had to go to the tag browser, select the root of the widgets folder, show all children, and then you could search and filter, but it had to crawl all the way down all your tags. You had a lot of widgets there. We've got a lot of widgets in VT-SCADA, so it took a long time. We now have it built into the product. It's fantastic. I use this all the time. So very easy to access. I simply go to the Idea Studio, and in the widgets panel there, if I want to search for something, the obscure one that I like to point out is the spawn command. That's one that fires off another application, so you can start other applications from VT-SCADA. And there's a button that does it, and it's called spawn, but I can never find it. It's buried in all these folders. So now I can just type spawn in there, bang, found it. Program spawn. Wonderful little feature. So that's all I really have to say on tip number 2. Tip number 3, internet client setup. So some of you may have realized that we've done some work, if you're a longer-term user of VT-SCADA, we've done some work on the internet client setup dialogues. But actually there's a bit more meaning to some of this buried within that. So it's now easier to edit separate server lists for each server. Okay, we have a whole window that allows you to specify all your servers, and then you can provide separate server lists for each of those servers. But importantly, each of the servers in the server list can have specified the port and whether it is a secure connection. So what's the use case where this becomes useful? Well, let's think of a system where you've got a dual redundant server and one of them is in the DMZ. So that's your external thin client access. That's where your customers are connecting in through a DMZ. That machine will have a secure connection, and you'll have certificates on it, or at least I really hope that you have certificates and a secure connection on that, so that your customers can access it. However, internally, your primary server may not have a certificate. It has no need to have that certificate on there, and you may just want to connect over port 80 to that machine. So you can do that. You can have a separate server list for your primary server and a separate server list for the DMZ, and have those secure connections. Okay, just to very briefly show where that is for anybody, if you go to the hamburger menu, as they call it, this 3 lines in the top left-hand corner, and down there you'll find the thin client server setup tab. So in here, on the server setup, this is where you add the list of servers that are going to participate in this cluster. And then on the connection addresses, you have a default address list, but this drop list also allows you to have an address list for Keith Laptop, which I just have as Keith Laptop, and one for Keith Laptop VM, which is actually configured with port 443 and a secure certificate on there. So my VM would, acting as a DMZ computer, would require the certificate installed. Okay. Tip number 4, the expression builder. Now again, this is one I have covered in previous years, but the expression builder is a really, really useful entry-level way to get into using expressions. But I find that we try to be intuitive, but I find that this is kind of buried away down in the dialogues. So I thought I'd take the time just to show you where that is and what it does. So back to my application here. And I'm going to open the tag browser and going to create a new I/O and calculation tag. So if I click the calculation checkbox, okay. Well, look, what I'll do, because I don't want you all sitting here, I'm going to move on my tip, and we'll come back to tip number 4, and I can at least talk through some of the tips that don't require direct VT-SCADA integration. So, well, let me just talk about how this works. Essentially, if you create an I/O and calculation tag and select it to be a calculation, that makes it an in-memory tag. That means that it's only going to exist in memory. It doesn't count towards your license count, and you can do some calculation with it. What sort of calculation? Well, when you select expression, you open the expression builder, and you get this little fly-out icon on the right-hand side of the window. This little fly-out icon here, and you can select the function selection. And in there, we provide a list of all the functions that you can use. And I say all the functions, it's not all the functions. It's just some of the most common functions. And we've grouped them together into different categories. So there is different categories of things like math functions, string functions, and so on. And when you select any one of those functions, it not only writes the expression for you, but when it'll pop open a dialog and allow you to enter in the parameters. And it'll do parameterized checking. So it'll check if the first parameter to the function requires an object, for example, or a tag of a particular type, it'll only allow you to select an object or tag of that particular type. Once you've completed that, it'll put the code for the expression right in there. So it's a great way, if you don't know how to write the code for something, you can go into the expression builder and select that. For the more advanced for you amongst us who are into writing script code, this is a great way to extend your VT-SCADA application. You can write your own functions. It's fully documented in the help. We have a nice section that will take you through with some completed code, and it'll allow you to build that. So we'll move on. Okay, tip number 5. Send SMS via Twilio without opening ports. So, some of you will know that we have Twilio integration built into VT-SCADA for alarm notification, for sending SMS messages out. The problem with that was it required a bidirectional port to be opened between the Twilio server and the VT-SCADA server. That was problematic for systems that were in locked down IT infrastructure, because they really don't like opening inbound port connections. Quite rightly, I mean, it's we're in a critical infrastructure environment. You don't want any port you open up exposes you to a cyber attack. So that was problematic. It meant that we couldn't use Twilio. Well, we have changed our interface to Twilio. So it is now possible for us to send those SMS messages without requiring an inbound port connection. The slight restriction on that is, and I think it's a little obvious, you can't acknowledge those messages, because an acknowledge does require data to come inbound to the server. And if you don't include the user account in your in the roster configuration, if you leave that out, the part of the message that is designed for ACKing isn't actually included in the message, so it just gets stripped out. So it's an outbound connection. Your guy gets the message, can go VPN connect into the server, thin client in, and get the access. It's just a little known bit there. Now, the configuration of that is in the application configuration. I'm going to attempt to show you that. We'll see how we go. So if okay, I'm just not going to use VT-SCADA at the moment. I've got screenshots of everything on here, so the demonstration is really just ephemeral. On here. So you can see on the screen there that the application configuration settings on the alarm tab, under the Twilio account settings, there is now an SMS only tick box, and you do not have to include any of the server configuration in there, the inbound server configuration, I should say. There. And with the blank username there, that just removes the acknowledge privilege. Sticking with Twilio, since we were talking about Twilio, this is I think quite a big deal for our North American colleagues here. We now support one Twilio account for multiple applications. So what does this actually mean? Well, previously, if you had multiple applications, you needed one sub-account in Twilio for each application, which in itself isn't necessarily a problem, until they added the A2P10 DLC registration process. Now, Peter assures me that that stands for Application to Person 10-digit long code. This is the anti-spam regulations, where you have to complete a registration saying that you are a good person, that you are not going to send lots of spam SMS messages. However, what in our experience, after 3 or 4 registrations, you then got knocked back for no apparent reason. And it's quite the effort to go through this registration process. So within VT-SCADA, we've made some changes. In your Twilio account, there is now the ability to connect. And once you connect, it downloads a list of registered numbers for your Twilio account, and you select which number you want to assign for the inbound call for that application. The beauty of that is you just have to go through the A2P10 DLC registration process once, and you're done. Okay? So that's kind of a neat little tip there. I've got application settings and context tags, and using application properties to store colors. This was a tip that I got from a colleague who was working on a large engineering project, and he wanted to have a palette of colors to define across his application. And so he came up with the idea of using application settings to store the color. So you go into the application settings menu, and you click on the advanced mode there. So by default, it's in the basic mode with the 4 tabs. So click on the advanced mode, and it switches into this table. And you can add an application setting. So you can see, or maybe you can't see at the back because it's probably quite small. So let me read that to you. It says, my red color. So that was the name of the variable that I created. And the value I gave it was this angle bracket and then the 4 hex digits representing the opacity, red, green, and blue values of the color. It's the same as the HTML colors, I guess, that you've come across as well. So I did that for my red color and my green color. And I was going to show you how to do that for my blue color, but we'll just take for granted that that's usable. Now, in the Idea Studio, when I'm using a color to do anything, so that could be the color of text on the screen, that could be the color of a box, a background, an indicator, anything like that. Instead of selecting the color from the color picker, we can use a text expression and reference the variable simply by putting a backslash in front of it. So we do backslash my red color. And then it'll pick that color, and that'll be used in your application. 2 things about this. One, you can render a page in your application that is a style guide. It shows you, here's the style for my application. It gives me a consistent style throughout. But secondly, if you decide to change it, so you don't like that particular shade of gray, there are 49 other shades of gray that you could pick from, and you can go in there and change. So you can change it in one place, and all of your applications will go through and it'll update. So that's a neat trick there. Go ahead.
Is that less overhead than having a calculation page?
It is, because it's just a single variable versus having a whole So, sorry, I'll just repeat that question there. The question was, is that less overhead than having an individual I/O and calculation string tag, an in-memory calculation tag that's just holding the string color reference? Now, that's an absolutely valid way of doing it, no question. You could do that. But there is quite a lot of overhead of having that tag and also having that load at startup. You're adding an additional load to the system there. Where the application settings is a single variable, and it is synchronized across thing. Next up is the on-screen keyboard. So this is a new feature that's coming out is released. I think it is released. If it's not released, it's coming really, really soon to a VT-SCADA application near you. So you simply have to enable the Use On-Screen keypad. So again, that's in our application settings. Go in there, add that variable, set it to 1. And anytime you enter any edit field where a numeric expression is required, it'll pop open this nice little keypad. And there's a couple of settings that you can do, actually, the application settings. You can change the size of the buttons. So if you have fat fingers like me, you can increase the size of each of the buttons. So I know a lot of these systems are on panel PCs that are maybe in a gloved environment for health and safety. So you might want to increase the size of that just for ability to type the numbers. But anywhere where VT-SCADA accepts a number, the keypad will pop up. The really good thing about this is when Windows changed to version 11, they got rid of the numeric-only keypad. The keypad is now the whole keyboard with the numerics on it. So it becomes very small and very fiddly to get in about. So this is a really nice user interface for numeric entry. Invert selection option in the Idea Studio. So this is kind of a small feature that a lot of people don't realize. But if you have a number of items selected, you can go into the select drop list here, this icon that's highlighted in blue in the middle. And one of the options in there is invert selection. So I use this quite a lot. If you've got a lot of widgets on the screen and you're wanting to select almost all of them, I would typically select the ones that I don't want to select and then invert, and it'll give me everything else very quickly. There's actually quite a few options in that select dialog that people don't realize are there. So you can select all. I think that's the one that most people are most familiar with. Control A, select everything in the Idea Studio. Usually, I think they go to the overview page, Control A, delete, and then start your overview page. But you can also select all images or all, what else? All lines, all text, all tag widgets. So if you only want the tag widgets in there, so you can select all these things. It's just a quick way of making multiple selections. Speaking of inversions, as somebody suggested the invert, they went, oh, I use that all the time. And then they realized they were talking at cross purposes. There's another invert feature in VT-SCADA, and it's really very, very useful. When you have an I/O and calculation tag, and it's using the digital option, I think the use case here was somebody wired up the PLC and then traveled across the country. And then when they went to commission, they realized that all the signals were backwards. They'd wired the PLC backwards. So you can go into VT-SCADA, and we have this invert input tick box. So when your PLC register is reading a 1, an on signal, VT-SCADA will read it as an off. And similarly, when the PLC is off, VT-SCADA will read it as on. And because we have the ability in our I/O and calculation tags to write as well as read, we have the invert output option. So that's when we're writing, when we write an on, it will actually output an off signal and vice versa. So we can actually flip the entire logic within the the entire logic of the PLC in the software there. So we can correct any mistakes in that thing. It's a very useful thing. I have come across situations where that's been kind of interesting, especially in old legacy systems where there's sometimes not necessarily consistency in the way that they've wired things. So this is quite interesting. there are a number of useful expressions that you can use on workstation tags. Can I just have a quick show of hands who VT-SCADA users uses workstation tags? Okay, right. So let me give you a brief background. Workstation tags allow you to monitor the health of your workstation. So we create these SCADA systems which are looking at the health of your plant in some shape or form, but we often forget about monitoring the actual health of the SCADA system itself. So the particular use case that I had from one customer, they had a large number of remote systems, typically about 50, and they wanted to know when, if anybody was logged onto that remote workstation, so that they could do an application, an operating system update, a remote operating system update. So you can do, you can read the logged on status by using this expression, security manager dot get username. And that will return back the username that is logged on to the server that is running that tag. So what we can do here is create workstation tags for each of our servers, and then we can create the expression in there, and we can see a list of the users that are logged on to those workstations. In the same way, he also wanted to record which version of VT-SCADA was installed on that machine. So if you have a large network of computers, you may have deploying updates. You may want to know exactly which version is recorded there. So this expression version will return back the VT-SCADA version number. Now, just a word of caution. I'm using VT-SCADA 12.1.99.02. I think. I'm only on 02. I was only allowed to install 02. You have to get very special permission to use 04. That's for elite users. So normally, the number is returned as a floating point number. So you get the 12.199.02 in my case. For the current version of VT-SCADA 12.163, that would be 12.163 is the version number. But you could use a calculation to add the decimal points in if you want to format it just exactly. So these are two really neat expressions, and there's a bunch more. They're documented in our superb online help. Carrying on in this is a really neat trick. Having just passed daylight saving time here in the US, I fly back home on Saturday night to Sunday. So I'm from the UK. We haven't finished our daylight saving time, or we're not into the British summertime is the time zone, and summertime in Britain is questionable at best, especially in the Florida sunshine. So our daylight saving time starts on the last Sunday of March. But we have servers in all different time zones, in all different countries, where the daylight saving changes at varying different times. Oh, so this is a free tip. I'm just going to interrupt. I know some of you travel a lot for work, and if you're flying and you're on a plane and you decide to take your laptop out and you want to do some work, make sure and mute your application. Don't ask me how I know that one. You get some very strange looks. I can also recommend not going back to your hotel room after an opening ceremony, doing some work on your presentation, leaving for lunch, and it automatically logging you out and the alarm blaring in your room for an hour. It really doesn't, poor neighbors. Anyhow, so we have lots of systems that cross time zones. And time zones it's the developer's nightmare, because we have the situation where we have a server in one time zone, another server in a different time zone, you have the remote telemetry unit in a third time zone, and the user in the fourth time zone. And what do you do with all those times? So typically, VT-SCADA runs in UTC. We record all the data in UTC, and then we convert to wherever or whatever anybody is at. But trying to figure out which time zone servers are in is a bit of a nightmare. So, or is this server in the correct time zone? So the little tip here is to create a workstation driver tag. And then on the workstation driver tag, there is a drop list which allows you to select which workstation you are examining. Well, why don't we just create this one tag and we'll use a parameter expression to calculate what is the workstation name. So if we do RPC Manager workstation name, it's going to select the workstation. So this one tag on the primary server will display if it is in the daylight saving zone. And then when you look at the backup server, it'll display whether the backup server is in daylight saving, and so on and so forth. And then we have the reading the time zone there. So we've got expression : time zone, and it's the first parameter. So if you have a look at our online help, the time zone statement returns back a number of things. And number one is a textual description of the time zone. So Eastern Standard Time, or I think we're in Eastern Summer Time is the official title of the time zone we're currently in. And then the second one there that I put on, and I wanted to include that because it's a little bit complicated there. So time zone 3 actually returns back a structure or an array of different things. So you can index that by using the square brackets. And the daylight saving enabled flag is index 1. So you use that, and that will display whether it's in daylight saving or not. Okay, moving on. I wanted to touch on discretes, because I think this is a wonderful feature, and many of my customers don't really know how to use it properly. And it's so simple, and it's really, really effective. So quite often we will get a value, an analog value, that represents a number of discrete states. So in this case, I had just 2, 0 and 1. But I want to represent that as text on the screen to say daylight saving disabled or daylight saving enabled. And I have a beautiful demonstration of this in VT-SCADA, but given our projector issues, I'll make sure that you get the change set of my application so that you can try it all out yourself, and you'll see this. So what we can do is we can create an IO and calculation tag and select the discrete method. So discrete, just as I say, defines it as an analog value with a lot of numbers. And then the way that you hook that up to have lots of nice text is in the style settings dialog. So the style settings tag, I should say. Style settings define the colors of your alarms and your colors of your analogs and things like that. I'm sure you've come across that before now in there. But on the last tab, the tab is called equipment. And that's where you define equipment types. So in this case, I created a daylight saving time piece of equipment. And in there, I can give it a value, so 0, 1, 2, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever. However many discrete steps I have. I can give it a textual label. I can give it a color. I can indicate whether it's flashing or not. So certain states you might want to flash, and certain ones you don't. And you define all of these. Once you've done that, back in the IO and calculation tag, just on the ID tab here, so this is the first tab, just down the bottom, you'll see an equipment type drop list. All IO and calculation tags have that equipment type drop list. Drop it down, in there you'll find your new discrete, pop it in, and now when you draw this on the page, so if you go to the Idea Studio and drop a text value on the screen, it'll render the text for you. It'll actually say the different steps and different labels. And I use that all the time. I find it very, very useful. So, just a quick show of hands, who anybody use discrete? Oh, there we go. Yeah.
You forgot to mention the CSV import for equipment that has hundreds of different error codes.
Ah, yeah, okay, so you can, yes, as you say, so the gentleman, thank you, is pointing out that you can export and import, actually, these equipment types. So you can create a CSV table, pull all that information, so you got hundreds of, error code would be a brilliant example for a driver, for example. So if you've got a huge long list of error codes, you can put the values of the error codes, and then you've got the error definition right there on the screen for you. So yeah, great use case. Thank you. Okay. 14, some for the programmers or the anybody who's into expressions. We've modified the case statement, finally, so that it runs in steady state. Woohoo! It's a big deal. Well, at least I thought it was a big deal. So the case function in VT-SCADA can run in script or in steady state. So if you don't understand what that means, you need to take our scripting course, which was just finished. But the case statement, so in VT-SCADA, we have two types of statement. One that runs in steady state, that means it's evaluated continuously. And one that runs in script, which requires a trigger of something, maybe a timeout or some other function like that. And then it evaluates in what we call script. It's evaluated once and then continues on. The case statement operates just slightly different depending on if it's in script or in steady state. So in script, it selects one from the set of the parameters based on the first parameter. So the return value will be based, in this case, pump 0, 1, 2, or 3, based on the variable pump num. In steady state, and you have to be a little bit careful here, in steady state, all the parameters are essentially executed or evaluated, and the return value is the value of the one indicated by num pump. Now that's subtle, but what does that mean? Well, if one of the things that you were evaluating in your case statement was C++, okay, even although it is not the option that the first variable indicates, because it evaluates all of them, it will actually increment that variable. So for the programmers amongst you, that probably makes sense. For lots of people, it probably doesn't make sense. But it's kind of a cool thing. So the case statement is available in steady state there. Oh, wow. This is an oldie but a goodie. Hands up if you knew this one. Well, a few of you. Okay. So, when I explained this on a training course, somebody said, "Wow, I just thought it was a bug." What happens if you left click and you sweep your mouse? Now, I've got to get this right. That's why I put it on the screen. So if I sweep left, so that's I start at the right and I sweep left, everything that the bounding box that I've just created in the Idea Studio that touches any widget, any part of any widget, that whole widget will be selected. Okay? If you sweep right, have I got that backwards? You're making me you're doubled. I think it's backwards? Okay. I'm going into the Idea Studio. I'm going to check it. And it may go off the screen, but I can't bear if I've got this wrong. So. What was that, sorry?
He said sweep left. You have to enclose the entire object. Sweep right. You just have to touch the object. He's agreeing with us.
Okay. And I bet you're right. Well, I'm just gonna check. So sweep left. You have to fully enclose the objects to be selected. If I sweep right, I only have to touch the object for it to be selected. And this student, so yeah, I've got that backwards in the slide. I am also dyslexic, so I apologize. My left and right is horribly mixed up. It's very, very, very handy. It's a very, very handy thing, especially if you've got a lot of widgets in close proximity. This actually came from AutoCAD. AutoCAD has a very, very similar feature, if any of you used that way back in the old Windows days. So, yeah, very, very powerful. And as I say, I told this to a class of students. One guy said, I just thought that was a bug and it just wasn't working properly. So I kept sweeping. Oh, there we go, it's selected. So it may well have done. Interesting the monitor behaved itself there. So this isn't every one of my tips and tricks, and I can't overstate it. But I have some good news. So press F1 for help. I can't tell you how useful our help is. I use it all the time. And Andrew and the team in the technical documentation, so we have a technical documentation team now, team of people working on that, have done an amazing job putting together. Every programming statement in VT-SCADA script language is fully documented with a worked example. All our statements, all our pages, all our functions, all our drivers. If you want to know something, hit F1, up pops the help, and it usually takes you pretty close to what you're looking for. If you're looking for your Modbus driver addressing, open up the Modbus driver tag, go into the I/O tab, hit F1, it'll take you straight there. It's really good. So, if in doubt, press F1. Why have I got two screens on there? Well, Andrew has just completed updating our documentation template. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. It's a new look and feel. It's a very clean feel. I really like it. Summarizes. There's lots of summary tables to help you navigate better. I appreciate that quite often in the help, knowing what you're looking for is half the battle. How do I phrase this or thing? So lots of things. And a lot of ongoing work into tagging things and making them more searchable to find the information you're looking for. So, good stuff there. Sticking with help. Our help is available online. And you sort of think, well, that's it's a very easy statement. But this is super, super useful. I use this all the time. Our full help manual is online. So if you have a customer who asks a query and the answer is, oh, read the manual. And that happens a lot, I'm sure you'll agree. But what you can do is go to the exact page and then copy the URL and send them the link, and they can just click on it, and it'll pull the information back. Not only that, but Google, amongst other search engines are available, but it's been crawled by all the search engines and indexed. So you just have to Google it. So if you Google GUI rectangle, for example, you will get the VT-SCADA help for the GUI rectangle statement in VT-SCADA. And we have, the team have been investigating AI and how AI is coming online. So I'm sure you're all familiar with ChatGPT and other such chatbots and so on. And you can imagine now how a more interactive sort of conversation about, okay, how do I change the background color of a page in VT-SCADA? And it'll pop up a response because it has crawled our help and understands how to do that. So it's an interesting concept. Okay, 17, so we've 3 more to go. We're on the home straight. Multiple lists in the application manager. Again, quick show of hands. Who knew that you could do this? Okay. You see, I didn't. Well, I did know. I just didn't use it. And it's really handy. It's really good. So let me see if I can see if this goes horribly wrong. So I can just grab my application manager and stretch it. And there I have all my different applications. So I've got a 4th one there as well, which is just a list of all my applications. And how do you do that? Well, you go into the hamburger menu, and you go to List Manager, and in here, you create your lists. So we can let's create a ScadaFest. I've already got a ScadaFest one. Clearly I was experimenting, so let's do a Thursday list. Create a new list, and then from there, I can select my breakout game that I wrote in VT Scada, and thin client monitor, and trace viewer, and things. So now, I get another tab listed there with called Thursday. Really handy if you're administering a lot of user applications. You can segment your applications and so on. And as you resize the VT Scada application manager window, it orders your lists. So, kind of cool. Clearly, I need to read the manual more. Sibling tags. So Glenn touched on this morning. I think Chris touched on this in his thing. This is a big deal, I think. So this is not released yet. That's why I had to get special permission to use the 12.1.99.02 build. It was in there. It was built specially for ScadaFest. This is brand new. So traditionally, we have recommended when you build your tags, you have a context tag, which is typically your station. Underneath that, you would create a TCP/IP port or your communications port. Underneath that, you'd create your driver tag. Underneath that, you would create your I/O tag, or maybe several levels underneath that. The problem with that, it makes your tag names really unwieldy because you've got kind of redundant information. Like the operators don't really care which communications port it's speaking out of, or which driver type it is. They don't really care about that. So you could use references to your driver. So you could put the communications driver and the port in different places. You could do a fixed reference, or you could do a relative reference. These are reasonably complex to wrap your head around, especially if you've got complex structures. And then when you're creating new tag versions of that, you've got to make sure that you haven't done fixed links, because it's now pointing at the wrong communication driver, and you're wondering, clearly this well is full, and you're looking at the wrong level because you're pointed off to the wrong device. So what the team have done is something called sibling tag references. So if you imagine tags having brothers and sisters, it means when I create a context tag, and then I just put an I/O tag at that level, it's going to look for a driver or a port at that level. It's just going to look to its left and right. And there's a whole series of rules on this. There is a session later on today. If you were interested, if you're a system integrator and you're building tag templates, I would highly recommend. I think this is a really big deal. And I think Glenn alluded to that in the opening ceremony this morning. It's simple, but it's the simple things that are the devastatingly complicated. I think it's going to come to the point that this is the way that we do these things. It means, like in reports, your report headings, you no longer have these great long tag names. You can see it. In the HDV legend, how many times have you been fed up with the HDV legend? Because you can't see the tag name because the tag name is so long, it's scrolled off the bottom. So it shortens all of that, keeps things more realistic, more usable in that thing. Okay, last one. Flash the title bar or task bar for alarms. So again, this has been in the product for a little while. Well, the title bar has been in for quite some time. The taskbar flashing is quite new. So you can go to the application settings and you can turn on the alarm flash title bar. In fact, you don't even need to go to the advanced. These are in the basic alarm settings on the alarm tab. And there's a couple of tick boxes, so you can do that. And the net result of that, we'll try it and see. See how well so. Hey, look, my keyboard. I've got it enabled. I've got a touch screen here. So look, my fat fingers, I can enable the flashing the taskbar. You can see the taskbar on the bottom is flashing away. And if I enable the title bar, my title bar will flash. There are also two settings for the thin client, for the VIC. And the reason that they're separate is that VT-SCADA will have to send traffic. It has to send the flash command back and forward to the VIC, and it generates a little bit more traffic. So, and also it may be a little bit more distracting on a thin client device on a phone where it's flashing all the time. So they've separated that out. So you have the choice to have your server doing this or doing this on your thin clients. Now, the reason that this is kind of an interesting topic is if you have your control, your VT-SCADA station at the other side of the room, and you want to know if there's an alarm, looking for that little red flashing icon is more difficult than looking at the entire, oh, look, there's something up with that. We'll have to go and have a look. So it's a nice little tip there. Okay, that is it. We've reached the end. Thank you very much.